Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is Jacob Elliott. I wanted to record this presentation as a follow-up to my previous one. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. The topic that I wanted to chat on, I mentioned this thing called reality density transfer, or RDT, in the first presentation. And I wanted to dig a little bit deeper here because I think that it's particularly relevant to theories of consciousness, cosmology, and ascension. It's the idea that we're operating in a participatory universe, which means that we have the ability to reach out and affect the world around us using our actions, our thoughts, our voice. All of that can have an influence on somebody's life. And it happens every single day. You can almost conceive of this as like viewing consciousness as a marble. So every single one of us is inside of this black marble. It's a big old universe, and we're these little dots of light that are all over the place. So every action that we take, it ends up creating a connection with another dot of light that's within the marble, and hopefully those connections are positive, and we actually add to their lives. It's not necessarily always the case, but no matter what, we end up changing that person for better or worse. They end up doing different things than they would have otherwise if they didn't meet up with us. So we participate in the universe, we change people around us. Consciousness is like a marble. It's this mix of light connections that are in the material world, and then darkness, which is this spiritual underpinning that connects all of it and allows it to operate. You could think back to the first presentation. I brought up this idea of co-creation. So in my mind, reality is a dynamic, information-based system. Consciousness co-creates and maintains our reality. Uh, we're active co-creators. We're not passive observers in this principle. And the physical world ends up emerging from this co-creative process between consciousness and a source. Um, this is the actual diagram for reality density transfer. I just wanted to bring it up. You can almost look at this in 4 sections here. So the first section outside the circle is at time equals 0. So this is like you throwing dice. It spawns a specific event, this dot, and then this is your perspective, this tunnel. This is your perspective on that event. As time moves forward, this initial willpower, which is yours, so you want to throw dice and let's say gamble and win. Plus the event itself, plus your perspective, all of that enters into this big circle called Q star, the density adversary. So this is just reality stopping you from doing whatever it is that you want to do. If you want to throw dice, reality might make it so that you can't get on a table. If that's the case, you do get on the table and you throw your dice. That willpower, that initial momentum, heads into this reality density transfer system, which is the interior of the circle here. And it passes by this point, RPA, which is essentially speeding up all of this information and energy that you produce during this initial input uh, to a non-local dimension that's considering 2 major variables. The first one is you. So this is I. This is like the bigger version of you. It's all of everything that you've ever wanted to do, everything that you didn't want to do, all the information that is related to that, all the energy that's related to that is stored in this top half here. We have our regular, I guess, perspective moving through this experience as well. They're deeply intertwined. And then below the line, we have we. And this is the same thing that what is I, but for everybody else. So some people may not want you to be on that dice table, and they might try and void out your dice rolls by swatting your dice or something. That will be their willpower directly interacting with yours and affecting how the rest of this entire situation plays out. Um, so willpower comes into the system, gets sped up to a non-local universe. Then it enters into this thing called the point of combination. So this is where your initial willpower matches up with the willpower of everybody else. So that happens within this thing called a monad. And a monad is just a mirror. So the monad is a mirror-like surface that scans across the bottom section of this circle. And all of this is just energy and information that is in a spiritual realm. That is being held by literally everybody else around you at that table. You can't tell that it's there, but it is. This comes down to monads well of greater willpower. So all of this willpower, all this information, all of this energy gets combined with your willpower, information, and energy from the beginning of this whole event, sends it back out to a point where it slows it down, brings it back to local reality. So this is the real world. We're going from spirit back to real above this line. Um, this combined willpower from both we and I intersects your original perception, leaves Q star, the density adversary, and then you end up with T1, which is the end of the dice roll, hopefully. Assuming that nobody interfered with your dice, you should expect a dice related outcome. This whole system stops non dice related outcome. So, what is a non dice related income? A pink elephant. If I were to put the image of a pink elephant in your mind through time and space, and then you were to roll those dice, and then a pink elephant were to come instead of a die-related outcome, that would be pretty absurd, right? Um, should be impossible through quantum mechanics, technically possible, even though very, very, very unlikely. This is the system that makes sure that the likelihood is always virtually zero. So I guess, summarize here, RDT is the universe's esoteric operating system. It ensures a coherent unfolding of reality. It processes inputs from individual and the collective, and it resolves potential outcomes into one timeline. I mentioned earlier it's a four-stage process. First stage is the trigger, so you rolling the dice. Your will action initiates the RDT process. Willpower and intent combine to consciousness in the collective. This creates potentia, which is the probability of any given die-related outcome from happening. If you're just rolling two normal dice, I guess this would be 1 in 36. So that's a state of pure potential. You could have any one of the 36 outcomes, but only one of them will happen, and it probably won't be a pink elephant. So that's what the RDT calculation is doing. So it's taking time during that unresolved moment where the dice are flying through the air and they haven't come to a final rest on the table to actually figure out what specific outcome is going to happen. Is anybody going to mess with it? Are other people around the table going to swat at those dice while they're flying through the air and ruin the roll? And it just makes sure that what should have happened actually did. So stage 2 is computation. This is actually how that happens. So actions processed in a foundational realm. So this is not our version of reality. It's some sort of spirit realm. It's some sort of reality that is tangential to ours. It happens near instantaneously, and this entire process has to happen while those dice are flying through the air in order to resolve a final result. So it uses monads well as a kind of a buffer or balance here. So it uses all the accumulated knowledge from everybody that's at that table to figure out, is somebody going to act out, or is the dice roll going to result in a dice related outcome, or is this going to be a pink elephant related outcome, so a non-dice related outcome. And what stops that is Q star, so that represents reality's resistance. So we can't just turn dice into a pink elephant, guys. It doesn't work. We need to add a ton of weight, a ton of mass, and then rearrange all that weight and mass, and then hopefully electrocute it or something to bring it alive. There's a lot of transformation that needs to happen, and Q star is the one that stops that from happening without the necessary prerequisites. So stage 3 is resolution. This one's pretty messy of a photo, so I apologize for that. But basically, this idea is that outcomes are selected by the principle of alignment, not the principle of chance. So alignment's based on the agent's total state of being. That includes all the other observers that are in the arena throwing dice alongside that agent. It filters absurd outcomes, assuming that the outside agents is not aligned with those absurd outcomes, and it uses cognitive light cones as the casual path forward. So what a cognitive light cone is you can almost think of every day you wake up and you open your eyes, whatever you can see in front of you is your light cone. So it's based off of your memories, your future possibilities, your current present day perceptions. These are all part of what you use to create decisions. And if your light cone is not necessarily aligned between your intent and your actions, then the outcome that you would expect won't happen. That's called misalignment. It's the opposite of alignment. So your intent and your actions are coherent with your outcome. The RDC system would then allow information and energy to flow seamlessly between the physical world and the spiritual world. And as a result, you would end up with a favorable outcome for that dice roll, so to speak, assuming that that was what you wanted in the first place. Stage 4, implementation. So this outcome seamlessly inserted into 3D reality. You're going from that angular reality, so that non-local computational space is angular reality, using a timeless data bus. So inside of us there exists this idea of the heart flower, and it's a spiritual term. I believe it was originally described by the Merkaba mystics, so ancient Jewish mystics from thousands of years ago. And basically what they said was that if you are in a state of alignment, then your heart, your intentions will be pure. They'll be aligned with, in their case, God. Um, and if you are, then you'll never actually have to use your own personal, I guess, choices as like a guide stone moving forward in your life, because you have the heart flower. It's this natural north star. It has all of your personal data plus a transceiver that connects with this non-real realm, and it uses all of that information to essentially give you these intuitive hints, or maybe it sends somebody to come and meet you at a certain point in your life. All these different things called synchronicities happen through this system, and the universe is intelligently updating reality frame by frame as a result. So if you go and you throw those dice, and let's say this was just a random dice throw. You showed up at a table, put $5 down, you threw the dice, and you managed to get the dice on the part of the table that's the big old jackpot. Your alignment in this case was with effortless outcome. So you just showed up, put your $5 down, threw the dice, didn't care about the outcome. So you got, in this case, the universe's best possible outcome, which was seemingly based out of luck, but actually no, it's based out of indifference of the outcome. So if you only care that the outcome is good, you do not care how you get there, or even if it necessarily makes sense to you, just as long as it aligns with your core values, then the universe uses this reality density transfer system to weight the outcome towards that best possible case scenario. Causal correction principles. Okay. This is, I guess, kind of the core notion of this presentation. So this isn't just a way that we interact with the world around us in a non-probabilistic sense. It's actually a way to correct different mistakes that we make throughout our lifetime. So those mistakes might not be ours. It might be made by other people in our life that have stuck with us. So this is actually a self-correcting system. So it doesn't matter if somebody else has done something horrible to you. This system would essentially pay you back, assuming that you're actually willing to work through a lot of the problems that come along with that. Because once again, this system works through alignment. If you are aligned with trying to be malicious or trying to hurt somebody for hurting you, that is not what this universe is pushing for. So it will probably lock you out of any sort of spectacular happenings that would result in that need coming true. Once again, transferring information between energy, transferring between energy information between the material and spiritual realms is kind of how this entire thing happens. So the spirits need to feel good about it in order for it to become real. Maintains timeline coherence. So this is an idea that if you make a mistake in your life, this isn't a one and done type of thing. You can work on that. And then assuming that you overcome the consequences that came from your choices, you can get back onto your main timeline, which is hopefully your highest self. So misaligned choices, they trigger corrections. The correction is this feeling of being stuck until you act. So you need to change something, you need to force realignment. You can't just hide away and expect things to change. You got to actually do stuff. So an example of this in real time. So poker is a great example of it. So Daniel Negreanu is a poker player that I've been following for, over a decade now, and he's probably one of the more interesting candidates for this sort of explanation. The reason why is that he actually manipulates table psychology, and he creates a projection in his opponent's mind about what should or shouldn't happen. And he ends up winning more often than not because of this. So A really great example of him is whenever he shows up at the table. So he said this a million times. He will not show up at a poker game if he does not feel like playing. The reason why is because if you do not feel like playing, you do not intend to win. So once he shows up, so he feels like playing. He doesn't drink. All he does is like eat a small bit of food, drink a little bit of water. He doesn't do caffeine, doesn't do a ton of alcohol or anything like that. So he's staying focused on what he's trying to accomplish, which is winning the poker tournament. The third thing that he starts doing is he immediately starts talking to people in a very casual tone. So he'll give them, assuming that he's in the hand, he'll give them information. Sometimes that's bad information, sometimes it's good information. You really don't know with him because he presents it in such a way that is almost impossible to tell. You just have to trust him. And that's where he begins to win. So what he's done is he's created a worldview in your mind that he knows more, he's more capable, he's better than you, blah 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 blah. And because of that, people end up folding winning hands to Daniel more often than what they should. And it's uh, given Daniel an option to reliably be profitable in poker. If you go and you take a look at his tournament winnings, it's like up and up and up and up and up until the last couple of years it dropped down. He talked a lot about that, where he just didn't feel like winning, so he didn't win. And yeah, that's the crazy thing about alignment. So he showed up aligned and he wins millions of dollars. That's this whole process of RDT in action. So why does this work? Well, it's because the cosmos is a layered reality. So totality, which is the top layer here, this is where I guess everything comes from. If you're familiar with the Gnostic perspectives, this is kind of right out of their books. Totality is essentially everything that ever was, wasn't, or was about to be is within here. It's the foundational substrate of existence. This is pure information, pure energy. Spiritual silk, which is this barrier right here, it's the bottom of totality. Essentially, it's what ends up shaping the physical world. So the topology of the spiritual silk impacts everything below it. The material layers are the physical worlds that we perceive, and then the consciousness marbles, these blue, red, green, orange, yellow, pink, all these different colored marbles that are in the spiritual silk and below, they're the actual individual units, so they are ourselves. Whenever the physical body's gone, this consciousness marble remains, and it's a mixture of typically light and dark and all the different connections that are made along the way. All of it starts as these gray orbs that are up here in totality before they come down to the spiritual level and get encoded and all that fun stuff. Yeah, they're essentially default templates, and so they move their way through. Spiritual silk, this is non-real. Once again, pure information, pure energy. This is a high density state of information. Uh, it goes through this silk and kind of diffuses into lower density states, and then these lower density states of information are what allow like the basic materials, the foundational building bricks of our physical world to connect with each other. Over the course of billions of years, these connections eventually stop being completely random, and they eventually start producing worlds with consciousness, so bodies that can actually go in and exist and move these worlds about. Until then, virtually all of this is just kind of a consciousness soup in the galaxy before it actually comes together into a material realm. And then these consciousness, they end up down here, start wandering around doing stuff. They build civilizations. Maybe they control water. I don't know. They hike up mountains and stuff like that. They're basically just consciousness experiencing or totality experiencing the more fundamental parts, the lowest level of our reality, because it's everything. So how does this system actually work? I've been talking about alignment. So alignment with signal. Signal is not noise. So what signal is it's an individual choosing coherent information from clear intent. So this is you having an idea that you want to execute. You go and learn everything that you need to learn of how to execute that idea successfully, and then you go and you do it. So you intend to learn, you learn, and then you go and you execute on what you learned. That is signal. Noise would be dissonant information from a cluttered mind. So this could be, we shouldn't do this because this is just going to be a failure and you're not going to have any fun, blah, 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 blah. If you align with the dissonant information, nothing will ever work for you in this system because it's based off alignment. So if you align with dissonant information, you will only get this kind of chaotic, broken pathway. If you align with signal, well, it's a different experience. So the choice leads to distinct paths and outcomes. Every single choice that we make in our life aligns with noise or signal, and yeah, we use those choices to either live happy or not so much. How does this work? Well, there's this term in mathematics called spline theory, and this is relevant here because it's essentially a way for you to link up a whole bunch of seemingly disconnected events into a coherent curve. And this center here is like source, and through source it creates this energetic push that begins to push us away from source. We go out, we do stuff and things, we make actions and choices, and sometimes we hurt people and sometimes we help people, but somewhere along the way we end up having a shift of our own, and whatever mindset that we were in on the way up, it begins to kind of corrode a little bit. Maybe we have a hard time, we have a career shift or a big change in our education. Either way, it changes how we view the world, and we start to rotate back, towards source. Once we get to source, we kind of continue on this pathway. Things are starting to get a little bit better. Things are starting to heat up again. We have another event that happens in our life that kind of gets us back to that full energy state, and then we start moving back towards source. And yeah, we just keep on following this uh, constant expression of yeah, back and forth. Um, so this continuous curve is basically all of your choices and all of the impacts that they've had. Each loop is basically a year in your life, essentially. This map exists on a larger cosmic structure that absorbs all of the information that you generate from your lived experience in each one of these loops and stores it in a place that's not here. It's not part of reality. So this is where things get a little funky. If you were to take a look at every one of these loops as a your own lifetime, you would create this disk here of all this information, all of this lived experience. Um, Now, if you consider this disk as one of a stack of disks, and each one of those disks is another part of your family lineage, or maybe it's another version of reality that you lived in. Um, this year by year starts to have an increasing amount of information. Um, so this would be just born, this would be towards the end of your life, you have the maximum amount of information. All of this is part of this central, I guess, cord system, for lack of a better term. And this is all of the actions that you're taking and how they're actually tying into other parts of your life. So actions that you made here might actually tie into actions that you take down here, and that these connections from source are actually all of the memories and feelings and whatnot that you had along the way that actively shape which choices that you make whenever you come across this new this new area to make new choices in. So this source right here is remembering everything that has ever happened and how you felt, and it's connected to each and every one of the choices that you make, along the way in your life, and those choices eventually stack up into a total amount of lived experience. Um, Once that lived experience is, made, we flip it over to the void, and these strings that I was describing in the previous recording there, um, they are really important because it's all of very specific lived experience that has fundamentally changed you or somebody else. These strings, they stick with you. The information of them is actually encoded in our DNA, not as changes to the sequences themselves, but it's changes to how that sequence expresses itself. And when that expression changes, how we would actually act in the real world changes as well. So um, when we change, it creates a new string. That new string eventually it has information, tons of energy with it. It's got to terminate at some point after we leave this realm. Um, I'm assuming that all that information, all that energy drops into what's called the void. So the void is a place that houses all timelines, lessons, and archetypes. So as we're going through life, we're learning all different types of things. We're also inheriting archetypal patterns. So we might know somebody who's a bit of a trickster or a jokester. That would be the jester archetype. We might know somebody who's maybe they're a little bit standoffish, or they prefer to be alone. So that would be, another archetype in the pattern. Maybe somebody is a king or a ruler. Um, all of these archetypes make impressions on our ego, and we use them to present a idea of who we are to the outside world, so that other people can, understand what to do with that information. All of it we have access to, so we know all of these archetypes, and we can have a sense for who somebody is just based off of how we feel about them. The void is this place, this alternative reality, this angular reality where all this information is stored. So our consciousness is able to, I guess, interact with this void, and because the universe is, operating in a cyclical nature, my main theory is that this void is constantly expanding, and all of the energy and information that's getting dumped into it is required to keep it expanding. Um, the reason why it needs to expand is because if it doesn't have that growing pressure inside of it, then the pressure from outside, the pressure of totality, the pressure of everything would crush that void and eliminate, I guess, our universe in the process. Um, this could be an explanation for why the Big Bang happened. So void collapses, the entire universe loses its structural integrity, it falls in allward onto itself, and that pressure causes the cosmic reset of the Big Bang. Um, Wanted to bring this back down to individual sovereignty, because that's really what this is all about. So the individual's journey to internal alignment is really important. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to go through every aspect, every time that has happened in our lives that's created an element that's like stuck with us, that's created one of those soul strings that moves forward with us, affecting future decisions. What we want to do is we want to go back in time and have conversations with previous versions of ourselves, or previous versions of people that we maybe have interacted with or hurt, or did any of those things to. And you want to actually have a full on expression or dialogue with that sort of part of your life, to try and understand it a little bit better. Um, if you can focus on doing this, and then you can go to all these different times in your life, and you can focus on that and get through that pain, you'll generate a clearer signal, because any pain that you don't think about is still there, and it's still impacting you. It grows over time, and it's super easy to ignore. So emotional mastery is key for going back through, understanding who you were, who you wanted to be, who you are now, who you're going to be. Um, Through this process, you develop what I call unshakable vibration, which is this idea of a just a consistent amount of light being generated from inside, a consistent amount of power. So the diagram is super helpful here. This is what most people will call the philosopher's stone. It's generating some amount of energy. That energy is being channeled, and it's actually being brightened or improved by this person's focus. So they're focusing on positive things. They're focusing on moving forward. They're focusing on healing from their past, and that creates a stronger and stronger light. Now, this little halo that goes around you. So this is real. This is part of the Mayo Clinic's most recent heart science. They figured out that there's a electromagnetic field, bioelectric field, that extends up to 3 meters around every single person out there, assuming that you have a strong ticker, and we can feel this. We can interact with this. So this field, it can be dark or it can be light, or somewhere in between. And this person has done a lot of work. They've created a light field, and with this energy source, okay, now they have coherence. They've got alignment. It travels up their spinal column, through a gland in your forehead, basically, which produces all different types of chemical reactions that are associated with spiritual experiences, and then it kind of comes out of the crown, combines with this halo. This is the point where reality density transfer actually happens. All this information, the spiritual energy, is being absorbed into what I can only assume is the void. So why does all this happen? Just before we wrap up, path of sovereignty. So individual's journey serves a collective purpose. The network, so the consciousness network that I talked about in my first presentation, this network is shared spiritually amongst everybody who is alive and dead today. DNA imprinting is what grounds the shared experience. So the study of epigenetics, you can take a look into it for yourself. depending on so if we're born with certain genetic traits or we inherit them throughout our life, nature versus nurture is kind of the general idea here. That's what allows this, I guess, whole consciousness network to express itself. Um, so the goal of the network, as far as I can tell, is to activate divine nature and ascend. So those are two pretty scary words for a lot of people. So divine nature just means we are in the absolute present moment. Um, there is no time between when we make a decision and when the outcome happens. That's just the nature of divine reality. You infinitely manifest whatever your intent is because your intent is aligned with that of a higher power. And then the ascension process. So this isn't a process where we leave this physical earth. I believe that it's a process that changes our like psychological state from a state of lack, from a state of fear, to a higher level state, and that state allows us to interact more honestly with each other, grow together as a community, and it creates synchronicities that allow us to do the things that we need to do right at the same time when we need to do them, and we have all the resources available to us to do so. This kind of collapses down into this idea of Merkaba. So I mentioned the philosopher's stone earlier in the picture of the individual who is meditating with the light in their heart. Jewish mysticism talks a lot about this. The Merkaba is an ascension vehicle. It's a spiritual vehicle that connects your physical reality and the spiritual reality. It enables an ascension and transcendence. So this idea here is that you're not actually leaving this physical reality. What you're doing is you're moving through energetic or vibrational bands, and that each band that you increase, the probability of you like having like your best version of your life increases as well. Um, so it's activated through consistent spiritual practice and intent, and its goal is to rewire reality from within. So uh, the most famous example that I have of this is there are tons of people throughout history that have been held captive against their will. What these people do in the most successful way possible before they leave this realm is they actually don't engage with their outside captors. So those outside captors are trying to infiltrate your mind. They're trying to create a hell within your own mind that you put yourself in there. Because they know that no matter what, if they can't break you, you can break yourself. And then the final piece that I'll talk about here. So this ascension piece, it's dynamic. It's not a simple process. Like I said, you're not leaving this world. You're staying in this world. You're just entering a more coherent version of it that has less temporary disruptions and problems to deal with. Stillness is key for this alignment, this transformation. You need to remain still. You can't have outside influence changing how you decide to go about this process. It's a deeply personal process that emerges from this archetypal mapping. So you're understanding a little bit more about who you are on the inside, dealing with that, using the Merkaba and those spiritual practices, you can actually anchor your soul, provide stability, power, energy to move through the world. And then the more positive choices that you make as a result means hopefully that you're going to be moving up that ascension timeline to higher vibration versions of reality where your best self is kind of like your default self. So key summaries, takeaways. Reality is an information-based construct. Reality density transfer is a self-correcting operating system for the universe around us. The individual path of sovereignty through focus is the core of it, but it comes into a collective path, which is ascension via the Merkaba by a bunch of sovereign people who are all focused on a better version of reality. That's all I have for today. Thanks so much for watching, and look forward to chatting with you soon.